There are secrets we carry to the grave. My husband, Jose, took his with him, but left behind a letter that turned my grief into terror. When I opened that envelope, 3 days after his funeral, I read words that left me completely shaken. Clara, don't trust anyone, not even our son, Lincoln. 52 years of marriage, and in the final lines he ever wrote to me, the man I shared my life with was warning me about the boy we raised together. Jose died of a heart attack at 74. It was quick, the doctor said. He was in the auto repair shop we built from scratch, working on the engine of an old truck, when his heart simply stopped. Lincoln found his father collapsed among the tools, oil staining his still warm hands. My son cried in my arms that afternoon, and I felt we shared the same agony. Or at least, that's what I believed. The letter was hidden inside Jose's Bible, the one that had belonged to his mother, and that he always kept in the drawer of his bedside table. I found it by chance while looking for documents for the estate. The yellowed envelope had my name written in his handwriting. He must have written it in the last few months, when he began to feel the chest pains he stubbornly ignored. Besides that terrifying sentence, there were specific instructions. I was to look for a metal box buried in the backyard, beneath the old jacaranda tree where Lincoln used to play as a child. Inside, he said, I would find proof of something he had discovered, something that made him fear for my future. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at our wedding photograph on the living room wall, our young, hopeful faces standing before the Church of Our Lady of the Immaculate Conception, and wondered who that man beside me truly was. What secrets had he kept? And why, of all people in the world, would he distrust our own son? Lincoln had always been a good son, hard-working, devoted, present. After his wife, Evelyn, died of cancer 3 years ago, he had grown even closer to us. He came for dinner every Sunday, helped Jose in the workshop, took care of small repairs around the house. How could that same man be a threat? The next morning, I waited for Lincoln to leave for work at the construction company. I live alone now in this house Jose built with his own hands, and the silence was suffocating. I took a shovel from the shed and walked toward the jacaranda tree. My 70-year-old heart pounded as I drove the metal into the damp soil. I dug for almost an hour, sweat dripping down my forehead, until the shovel struck something solid. The metal box was rusty and heavy. I sat right there beneath the purple shade of the jacaranda blossoms and pried it open. Inside were documents, photographs, and a notebook filled with Jose's handwriting. Panic rose in me as I turned the pages. They were financial records, receipts, bank statements, all pointing to money being siphoned from the workshop. Large sums disappearing over the last 5 years. Jose had documented everything meticulously, with dates, amounts, and notes scribbled in the margins. Another $10,000 gone. Needs solid proof. I can't believe it's him. The photographs made me choke up. Lincoln, and it broke my heart into pieces, was taking money from the office drawer at the workshop when he thought he was alone. Jose had installed a hidden camera. The footage was too clear to leave any room for doubt. I read every word in the notebook. Jose had started to suspect something when the accounts didn't add up. The workshop had always brought in a modest but steady profit, enough for us to live with dignity and save a little. But in recent years, the money had started to vanish. At first, it was small amounts. Jose thought it might be a mistake in his calculations, his memory failing him with age. Then, the missing sums grew larger, impossible to ignore. That's when he began investigating in secret. He discovered that Lincoln had massive debts. After Evelyn's death, my son had fallen into a deep depression. He never told us, never asked for help. Instead, he sought comfort at underground poker tables and in the false promises of loan sharks. He lost everything: the house he had shared with Evelyn, their savings, even the car. And when there was nothing left, he began stealing from us. From his own father, who worked 12 hours a day, even with a weak heart. From me, who had always cared for him with so much love and tenderness. Jose's last entry made me cry until there were no tears left. I don't know how to tell Clara. It will destroy her, but I have to protect her. Lincoln's debts are with dangerous people. I've overheard conversations. They want him to hand over the workshop property as payment, our entire life. He's willing to take everything from us. My husband died carrying that secret alone, trying to find a solution that wouldn't shatter our family. I put everything back in the box and hid it in my wardrobe. Lincoln arrived that afternoon with Chinese food for dinner, smiling as always. We sat at the kitchen table, where so many meals had been shared. I watched my son eat, laugh, and talk about his day at work. Every gesture was familiar, yet now I saw a stranger. The days that followed were agonizing. Lincoln kept coming to visit, worried about my loneliness as a recent widow. He brought groceries, fixed things around the house, asked if I needed money. Every act of kindness was a stab to the heart. I smiled, thanked him, served coffee and pancakes, while inside I was falling apart. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to demand answers. But Jose's voice echoed in my mind. Don't trust anyone. If my husband had been afraid to reveal what he knew, there must have been a reason. I began investigating on my own. I went to the workshop, which had been temporarily closed since Jose's death. I searched through the office documents, trying to grasp the full extent of the problem. I found stacks of overdue bills, supplier warnings, and threats to cut off electricity and water. The workshop was on the brink of bankruptcy. Jose had used his own savings to cover the holes left by Lincoln, trying to keep the business alive while searching for a way out. My husband had died of a broken heart as much as of a heart attack. One afternoon, Lincoln came home more anxious than usual. He said we needed to talk about the inheritance. He sat with me in the living room, his hands restless on his knees. He explained that the workshop was in debt, that it might be best to sell it quickly, that he knew interested buyers. We could split the money, and I'd be well taken care of, without any worries. His words were honey, but I knew the poison behind them. Those buyers had to be the same loan sharks hunting him down. My son wanted me to sign away our entire life to pay for his mistakes. I looked into Lincoln's eyes and saw despair. Not malice, but the terror of a man drowning in his own consequences. It made me think. Could it be that Jose had been too harsh in his judgment? I decided to test my son. I told him I needed time to think, that I wouldn't make any rushed decisions, that my grief was still too fresh. Lincoln nodded, but I noticed the tension in his jaw, the flicker of urgency in his eyes. He needed that money fast. That night, I received a phone call. A man's voice, deep and threatening, spoke on the other end. Mrs. Clara, your son owes a lot of money to people who don't like to wait. It would be a shame if something happened to you while you're living alone in that isolated house. Lincoln knows what he has to do. I hung up, feeling pure terror flood my body. The phone rang again immediately. I didn't answer. It rang 7 times throughout the night. That's when I finally understood what Jose had tried to tell me. The danger wasn't just that Lincoln had betrayed us, it was that his debt had put us all at risk. My son had opened the door to hungry wolves, and now they were circling our home. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Every noise was a threat, every shadow a danger. On the 4th morning, I made a decision. I went to the bank and withdrew all my savings. It wasn't much. Jose and I had always lived modestly, but it was enough. Then I contacted a trusted lawyer, Carter, an old family friend. I showed him all the documentation Jose had left. I needed to protect what was left of the workshop, to make sure it couldn't be taken because of Lincoln's debts. Carter helped me set up a trust fund that prevented the sale of the property without court approval. The workshop was protected, at least legally. Then I did something I never thought I would. I confronted my son. I asked him to come over for dinner and made his favorite meal. I waited until we were done eating. Then I placed the evidence on the table. Lincoln's face fell apart. Panic first, then tears. They weren't manipulative tears, they were the cries of a broken man. He confessed everything. The gambling that had begun as a distraction from the pain of losing Evelyn. The loans he took, thinking he could pay them back. The spiral of debt that grew until he lost control. The desperation that drove him to steal from us. And yes, the plan to sell the workshop to save himself. "Mom, I didn't want to," he sobbed, his head in his hands. "But they're going to kill me. And they said they'd hurt you too if I didn't get the money." My heart shattered. As much as Jose had been right to warn me, Lincoln was still my son. The baby I nursed, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the man who cried in my arms when his wife died. But I was also Jose's widow, and I had to honor his memory and his final wishes. So I said, "Lincoln, I'll pay your debts, but under conditions." He lifted his eyes, stunned. I explained that I would use my savings to pay off the loan sharks, but he would have to enter a treatment program for gambling addiction. He would need psychological help for his depression. He would have to cut all ties to the world that had nearly destroyed him, and he would lose any claim to the workshop. Lincoln agreed. He had no choice, but I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years: relief, as if he could finally stop running. It took months to arrange everything. I paid off his debts through Carter, who negotiated the amounts and ensured the creditors would leave Lincoln alone. My son entered a recovery program, far from the temptations of the city. Today, 2 years later, Lincoln is clean. He works as a construction supervisor and visits me every week. Our relationship will never be the same. The trust is irreparably broken. But something new has taken its place: honesty. He knows I love him, but he also knows his actions had consequences. Sometimes I sit beneath the jacaranda tree and talk to Jose. I thank him for having the courage to prepare me for the truth, even knowing it would hurt me. He knew me well. He knew I would forgive Lincoln too easily, that I'd let a mother's love blind me. His letter wasn't cruelty. It was the final act of love from a man who spent his life protecting me. I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean trusting them blindly. I've learned that protecting can sometimes mean saying no. And I've learned that the most painful secrets are often the ones that most need to be revealed. The truth can destroy, but eventually, it can also set you free.